Let's introduce arrow functions in ES6. Arrow functions work like normal method expressions in JavaScript, except they have a shorter syntax. Seeing the syntax certainly helps illustrate why it's called an arrow function, because, well, it sure doesn't look like a sword to me. It looks more like an arrow. Anyway, arrow functions have a great benefit in ES6. They're anonymous. So, what's an anonymous function? An anonymous function will usually not have a named identifier to refer to it. They're called anonymous functions because we declare them using an operator rather than the function keyword. Alright, so let's look at a normal function called blastoff. Function blastoff. And then in this blastoff function, we're just going to console.log 3, 2, 1, blastoff. And now let's call that function. And boom, we see it logging to the console. Great. So this function used the function keyword in order to declare it. Because we declare function with the blastoff key name, we now have a named identifier to this function of blastoff. Let's examine a way to not have a named identifier though, and then make an anonymous function. So let's take out this blastoff declaration. We'll comment out the code and just save it so we can use it as a reference point. And then we'll set a timeout, which just allows us to run some code after a certain period of time. And then we'll console log the same thing. 3, 2, 1, blastoff. And then as our second argument in the set timeout, we're going to say 1,000 milliseconds, so it should console log this after 1 second. And 3, 2, 1, blastoff. Great. So notice the important distinction here. In the original method, we used the function keyword to declare it. In this case, we're still using the keyword, but we're not giving it a named identifier. So we can't call this function blastoff because, well, that's not the name of the function. Now, using an arrow function in the place of this normal pre-ES6 function will definitely help illustrate things. Let's write our first arrow function now by just amending this. Take out the function keyword and use that arrow function syntax of the parentheses, equal sign, and right arrow sign. Great. As we save and reload, notice that it still works. Great. How about another anonymous arrow function? But this time we want to set it to a variable name this time, so that way we can actually have a name for the function. So this one will be an arrow function with a named identifier. This time we'll call it blastoff as a constant, then we'll set it equal to an anonymous arrow function, and as you can guess, we're going to console log 3, 2, 1, blastoff. Great. And then now, since we have a named identifier to this arrow function, we can call blastoff again. Wonderful. Notice that arrow functions are anonymous by default, and that's a great ES6 feature. However, we can still have named identifiers to arrow functions, so that way we can call them later in the code. Wonderful. Let's move on now that we know the syntax and some major catches of anonymous arrow functions.